Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here to take stacks of, well, often dense source material and really pull out the insights you need to get up to speed fast. And if you're involved in a startup, maybe as a founder, maybe in growth, you definitely know this feeling, this core frustration. You're pouring money, time, all this mental energy into marketing channels. Channels you just don't control.
Yeah, we're talking about the big social media platforms, right? The giants.
Exactly. They can tweak an algorithm, hike up their ad costs basically overnight, and boom, half your customer reach could just vanish. Or your whole acquisition model suddenly bankrupt.
It's a precarious position to be in, especially early on.
So the question I have to ask you, the listener, is this. What if you could actually reach that point of, let's call it perfect marketing? You know, that sweet spot, high efficiency, great retention, low cost.
The dream.
Right. And what if you could do it by completely bypassing that, frankly, broken and expensive system, by building something you actually own, a sovereign community?
That really is the ultimate goal, isn't it? And it's a strategy that feels uniquely suited for startups. They absolutely have to be capital efficient right from day one.
No choice, really.
No choice. And the challenge, it isn't just surviving those high customer acquisition costs the SEC. I mean, yeah, that's a killer for their early balance sheets, no doubt.
For sure.
But the real difficulty, especially for a young company, is how do you immediately turn those first customers, the ones you fought so hard to get? How do you turn them into a solid, loyal, sort of self-sustaining community before they churn?
That's the tricky part.
It is. You get that initial purchase, maybe a sign-up. But then what? How do you keep them around? Make them advocates without just constantly chucking money at platforms someone else owns.
Yeah, exactly. That step, that conversion from just being a customer to being an active community member, that feels like where so many startups stumble.
It's a critical failure point.
So, okay, the mission for this deep dive is pretty clear then. We're going to unpack exactly why building your own social network, your own self-sovereign community, is fast becoming the most capital efficient, the most effective way to do marketing.
And we'll show how startups are actually, maybe surprisingly, perfectly positioned for this, and how, new tech is making this digital independence genuinely possible for pretty much any brand now.
Right. So how are we going to structure this?
We're focusing on three main areas that really stood out from the source material we looked at. First up, we need to analyze the strategic need for digital autonomy. We're calling it the leased land problem. Basically, why traditional marketing is such a minefield.
Okay, the why it's broken part.
Exactly. Second, we'll dive deep into the actual metrics, the numbers that prove community-led growth is this perfect marketing. We've got real-world examples of revenue boosts, retention gains, solid stuff.
Numbers people can take to their investors.
Precisely. And finally, we'll explore how this emerging Web 4.0 technology provides a path forward. Specifically, we'll use Linkspreed's Web 4 at Home solution as a kind of model, showing a concrete way to actually achieve this digital independence for your community.
Got it. Leased land problems, the perfect metrics, and the Web 4.0 tech solution. Let's get stuck in. All right, section 1. Let's start with just the raw reality of that early startup journey. Because the whole world, the startup ecosystem, it runs on momentum, hustle, and let's be totally honest, a huge amount of hype.
Oh, massive hype. There's just this immense pressure, isn't there, for a new company to look successful, like right away?
Yeah, got to get that next funding round.
Got to look like the next big thing, the next Slack or Zoom or whatever.
But those appearances, they can be really deceiving.
Deceiving is putting it mildly. We really need to inject the counter-narrative here. Hype is often the opposite of sustainable growth, and the starkest, most recent example.
Quibi.
Oh, Quibi, yeah. Remember them. They raised nearly $2 billion before they even launched. An absolutely astonishing amount of money.
Based on what, though?
Based purely on hype. The perceived strength of the idea, high production video for mobile. Okay, interesting. But mostly, the Rockstar founder, the veteran CEO, the team backing it.
It seemed like, on paper, an unbeatable combo. Huge cash pile, proven leaders, novel format.
Exactly. It was just a classic case of VC FOMO, fear of missing out, just completely overriding any sensible caution.
And a result?
They shut down 6 months after launch, just gone.
Wow. 6 months. So looking back, what went wrong? What metrics did they ignore?
Well, that's the question we have to ask, isn't it? For a startup, the metric that actually means something pre-launch, it's definitely not just organic traffic to some flashy teaser site.
Right. That's a vanity metric. Looks good means little.
Totally. What really matters is that super specific conversion rate. What percentage of those visitors become genuinely high-intent signups? People who give you their phone number, maybe join a wait list with a verified deposit, something concrete.
So it's not just about collecting data points, it's about actionable insight. Does this tell me if my spending is efficient?
Exactly. It's about capital efficiency. If you spend, say, $100 to get 1,000 visitors, but only 2 of them convert to that high-intent stage, well, that tells you something fundamental is wrong.
Yeah, either the message is off or the market demand just isn't there.
Precisely. That's the proof point you need before you scale. Before you start burning through that massive pile of cash, it's all about proving demand and capital efficiency first.
Okay, so they survive pre-launch, they actually launch. Now they face a whole new internal headache. Hiring the right marketer.
Oh, this is a big one. It leads to so much founder-marketer conflict because the roles, these specialized disciplines within marketing, they often aren't clearly defined early on.
Right. Founders often just want a head of marketing, but don't realize they need different skills at different times.
Yeah.
Let's unpack those core disciplines. We've got brand marketing, technical marketing, and product marketing.
Yeah, and a founder typically needs bits of all 3, right? But early on, they can usually only afford one dedicated hire, so making that choice is critical.
Okay, start with brand marketing. What's their focus?
Brand marketing is about the long game. Broad awareness, building that top-of-mind recall. They focus on channels that are entertaining or useful. Think content marketing, email, community building, managing the social media presence.
So future awareness,
Okay.
slow burn.
Exactly. Slow and often really difficult to quantify in terms of immediate ROI, which can frustrate founders who need sales now.
Which brings us to the short-term revenue driver.
Yeah.
Technical marketing, often called growth or demand gen.
That's the engine room, yeah. Technical marketers are all about the data, rigorously data-driven, focused on measurable tactics, SEO, paid ads, conversion rate optimization, CRO, lifecycle marketing.
And measurable stuff.
Totally measurable. They are really skilled at capturing people who are looking to buy right now. If you're, say, post-product, pre-seed, and you just need revenue, fast revenue that depends on generating immediate leads, this is usually your first, most crucial hire. They're the quick hit specialist.
Okay. And then the third leg is product marketing, the bridge.
The essential bridge, yeah, between the product team and the actual market. They're responsible for that deep market understanding, making sure the product market fit is really tight. And they craft the core messaging, the positioning, writing high impact copy, creating sales assets.
Crucial stuff.
Absolutely crucial. But here's the important nuance. Product marketing doesn't typically focus on demand creation or even demand capture. If you hire a product marketer as your only marketer early on, you'd better already have a strong way to get leads. Maybe the founder's doing all the sales, or you have a good outbound team. Because the product marketer is mostly refining the message for the traffic you already have.
Yeah.
They're not usually bringing in new traffic or building that broad top-of-funnel awareness.
Okay, I can totally see the conflict now. Founder hires a technical marketer, great at paid search, optimizing landing pages.
Yeah.
Then the founder suddenly decides, hey, we need a huge TikTok presence.
Wow.
Or I need more thought leadership posts on LinkedIn.
Exactly. And they're basically forcing that technical expert into a brand marketing role, a role they might not have the skills for or frankly any interest in.
Sets everyone up for failure.
You got it. You set the person up for failure and you set your bottom line up for failure because you're forcing them outside their core expertise. This difficulty, finding the right specialized fit early, it definitely contributes to why so many startups fail, even ones built on what seems like a good idea. It often comes back to this foundational lie.
The idea that good products sell themselves.
That lethal myth, yes.
We really need to look at Anki, the robotics company, right? Proof that even amazing innovation isn't enough if the marketing isn't there.
Anki is such a perfect, tragic example. They had these incredibly innovative, beautifully designed robot toys. Remember Cosmo and Vector?
Yeah, they were cool.
They were engineering marvels, seriously advanced stuff, but they neglected the marketing and the distribution side of things. The cost of making that sophisticated hardware was high, plus they were burning cash on complex software development.
The whole business model became unsustainable.
Right. They simply couldn't get the product into enough hands efficiently enough. The lesson there is just brutal. No matter how good your product is, you have to invest strategically in effective, efficient marketing and distribution, especially if your product is complex or expensive to make.
So Anki is a warning about getting initial traction. But Skype Skype is the cautionary tale for when you have traction, when you're mature, and you still mess it up.
Skype. They had market dominance, and yet their downfall was really threefold. Bad marketing decisions, yes, but also products that just became bloated and too complex with features nobody asked for.
And a real lack of corporate agility.
Crippling lack of agility. Think about the pandemic hitting. Skype was the established name in video calls, but they couldn't adapt fast enough.
Zoom and Teams just ate their lunch.
Practically overnight, they lost huge market share because they struggled to integrate simple things people needed for remote work quickly. They just kept adding complexity instead of focusing on core user needs. Agility is it's everything today. In tech, if you're standing still, especially in product and marketing adaptability, you are absolutely moving backward.
Okay, so if that traditional marketing minefield is too expensive, too risky, especially for a lean startup that needs capital efficiency above all else, where do you turn?
Well, this brings us right to the core problem we identified in the sources, this concept of leased land.
The landlord analogy.
It's the perfect analogy for where so many startups find themselves today. Imagine this. You launch a fantastic specialized restaurant, prime spot, downtown. You lease it. You invest heavily, the brand, the staff, the fancy kitchen systems. You make it a real destination. You're doing great.
Sounds good so far.
Right. Then the landlords, think of them as the social media platform starts making changes. Changes that are definitely not in your best interest.
Okay, like what?
First, maybe they decide to hike the lease significantly. For you, that means higher ad costs just to reach the same number of potential diners. Then they force these bizarre renovations. Suddenly, your dining room is smaller, arbitrarily reducing your organic capacity to even talk to your loyal customers.
They mess with your reach.
Exactly. Then they make you take down your cool custom signage, your brand identity, so people walking by can't even easily see who you are anymore.
That's rough.
And then, the worst part, they decide they're going to charge you an entrance fee for every single customer who walks through your door, even the regulars, even the people who already follow your page and love your food.
Wow. Okay, that paints a pretty vivid picture. That really captures the pain of pouring all your effort into customer acquisition on, say, Meta or X or even LinkedIn.
Doesn't it? Your customer flow shrinks, your revenue potentially drops, and your expenses just skyrocket. All because of these constantly shifting algorithms, rising ad costs, things completely outside your control. You built a great business, a great restaurant, but the landlord, they own the customer relationship. They own the traffic flow. That model just feels fundamentally flawed. The platform's goals, their engagement, their ad revenue are just not aligned with the brand's goal of reliable communication. They're often diametrically opposed, which is precisely why smart brands, especially startups who just cannot afford this crazy high rent, are changing their whole approach. They have to bring acquisition and, critically, retention closer to home.
So the answer is moving off the leased land.
And onto property you own, moving to a private social network or an own community platform.
Tell me about the advantages there.
Oh, they're immense. And immediate. Tactically, just think about it. You get inherent security, much greater privacy for your members, which is a huge selling point today. And you can personalize the entire experience exactly for your niche audience. Total control. And strategically, maybe most importantly, you just eliminate that constant worry. You stop stressing about algorithm changes, suddenly gutting your reach or messing up your customer relationships. You control the dials now.
And looking at the data that supports this shift, it really moves the conversation beyond just risk mitigation, doesn't it? It's not just about avoiding the bad stuff. It's about actively generating value you couldn't get elsewhere.
Yes. It's about generating a loyalty dividend, a level of loyalty you simply cannot replicate when you're just renting space on a public platform.
What does the data say?
The data is pretty definitive. Branded communities that are fully owned, where the brand controls the platform, are 16% more likely to foster really intense brand loyalty compared to just relying on, say, a Facebook group.
16% is significant.
It is. And when you own the platform, you also get custom moderation tools. You can ensure the conversation stays high value, positive, focused purely on your specific niche. You communicate directly, no algorithmic interference. That builds trust and significantly improves member loyalty over time.
And as we start thinking about Web 4.0, this deep integration of digital and physical worlds controlling your own data, ensuring privacy, that becomes almost an existential requirement, right? not just a nice to have.
It's becoming a compliance necessity. You hit a critical point there. When you choose to build an own community, you are consciously choosing to invest in an asset, your own platform, rather than just endlessly paying rent on a liability someone else's platform.
Okay, let's pivot to the quantitative side then. Because founders, investors, they need metrics. What does this perfect marketing actually look like in terms of financial outcomes? How does it achieve that capital efficiency we keep talking about?
It looks like something called the in-app community loop.
The in-app community loop. Okay, break that down.
This represents a really fundamental shift in how you think about the marketing funnel. The core idea is, instead of constantly relying on external channels, emails, ads to re-engage your existing customers, you integrate a dedicated social space right inside your application or your website. A place for users to connect with each other and with you.
So the community features themselves become the retention strategy.
Precisely. When companies get this right, when they successfully turn their own apps and websites into these self-sustaining communities, they create this incredibly powerful positive feedback loop.
How does that loop work?
Users naturally spend more time engaging. They engage with other users who share that sense of belonging, that common interest or goal. Or they engage directly with the company itself, maybe getting support, giving feedback, accessing exclusive content. It's all driven by utility and connection right there within your own space.
And that activity.
Yeah.
That's cost-effective marketing.
Hugely cost-effective because it's driven by internal engagement. It's driven by your existing members interacting. That inherently offsets the need for you to keep spending money on expensive paid ads just to bring those same people back again and again.
Okay, that makes intuitive sense. But what about the hard numbers? When companies implement these kinds of social features, things like activity feeds, maybe personalized groups, internal messaging within their own communities, what are the big quantified benefits? What justifies the engineering effort to build this?
This is where it gets really compelling. The measurable return on investing in that owned asset is just massive. The sources point to integrated owned social features boosting retention rates by up to 40%.
40%. Just stop and think about what a 40% retention boost does to your customer lifetime value, your CLV.
It's transformative for the business model. And at the same time, user engagement typically increases by around 35%. That shows members are actually finding real value in the platform itself. They're not just passively consuming.
More engagement, better retention. Does it drive actual growth too?
Yeah, overall growth tends to accelerate by about 30%. A lot of that comes from internal referrals, that word-of-mouth effect within a tight-knit community, and just general internal virality.
Okay, retention, engagement, growth. Those are all great, but the number that really makes founders sit up and pay attention is usually revenue.
It is, and the data here is staggering. Companies that successfully integrate these owned social loops see their revenue increase, on average, 2.8-fold.
2.8 times the revenue.
2.8 times. These are the kinds of numbers that absolutely justify the initial investment in building out that owned asset. You're fundamentally shifting the financial equation. You're taking huge chunks of money that would have gone to high SAC on leased land.
Right, paying the landlord.
And you're investing it directly into compounding your customer lifetime value instead.
Yeah.
It's just smarter economics.
It makes perfect sense. But like you said earlier, not all communities are the same. You can't just throw up a generic forum and expect these results, right?
Absolutely not. The key to unlocking these massive metrics is focusing ruthlessly on attracting and retaining high-value members. And that often means using intentional gatekeeping.
Gatekeeping, explain that.
It taps into basic psychology. A true membership, a valuable community, isn't just about getting access to some premium content bundle. It's really about the people inside, the connections you make, the insider information you share, sometimes even the status associated with being part of an exclusive or highly specialized group.
And if it's free to enter?
If it's free, it tends to get noisy,
Sure.
fast. The signal-to-noise ratio plummets. But if joining requires some effort, or maybe even a payment, it immediately signals higher value. It attracts people who are more focused, more committed.
So creating some kind of intentional barrier to entry becomes crucial for quality control.
It's essential. Think about the two really clear examples we have that illustrate this principle perfectly. First, there's Tiger 21.
Right, the group for ultra-high net worth entrepreneurs.
Exactly. To even get considered for Tiger 21, you need, a minimum of $20 million in investable assets, and you pay a hefty yearly fee, like $30,000. What are those members buying? They're not buying content. They're buying access. Access to a room where the quality of the conversation, the expertise of their peers, is basically guaranteed by that extremely high barrier to entry.
And we saw a similar principle, maybe less extreme, from the entrepreneur Sean Puri.
Yeah, different sector, same idea. He built a community for e-commerce entrepreneurs, I believe, and he required every single member to actually verify that their online store was generating at least $1 million a year in revenue. That was the entry requirement.
So what's the key takeaway from these examples?
It's profound, really. Charging for entry or requiring some kind of verification like Sean did, it instantly creates a gate. And that gate acts like a filter. It naturally attracts higher quality members, people who show up with a clear purpose, real motivation, and a genuine desire to contribute, not just lurk.
And that makes the whole community more valuable.
Inherently more valuable, yeah. It also makes it much easier to moderate and just exponentially more productive than some sprawling free-for-all forum where the valuable signal gets constantly drowned out by noise and spam.
That gatekeeping, it ensures a better environment. Probably safer too. And it cuts down the risk of, trolls or bad actors ruining the conversation, which is a massive issue on public platforms.
Huge issue. And okay, let's say you're a startup founder listening to this. You're thinking, all right, I need a high value niche for my paid community. How do you find that? The advice is to lean heavily on what's called the transition technique.
The transition technique, don't offer something generic.
Exactly. Don't focus your community on just ab workouts or general career advice. That's competing in a huge, incredibly noisy market.
So find people going through a change.
Precisely. Look at the fitness entrepreneur Nancy Anderson. She built a really successful membership. Was it just about ab workouts? No. It was ab workouts specifically for postpartum women who are trying to regain their core strength after pregnancy.
Ah, that's super specific.
Incredibly specific. And that specificity transforms a generic health topic into a highly valuable, highly motivated niche. The members need this information. They need the support right now because they're in that specific transition.
That makes so much sense. The motivation to join and probably to contribute and help others goes way up because everyone is navigating that same specific change, whether it's, postpartum recovery or maybe switching careers from engineering to product management or scaling their business past that first $1 million mark.
That shared transition creates immediate utility, and that utility is what drives those incredible 40% retention metrics we talked about. People stay because the community is directly helping them navigate a crucial moment in their lives or businesses.
Okay, so you've found your niche, you've maybe set up a gate, you've got this motivated, high-value community humming along. You still need to feed it, right? To attract new, highly motivated members over time.
Absolutely. Which brings us back to content marketing. But it needs to be content marketing that's optimized for this community-first approach. And this is where we need to reach what Alex Hormozi calls level 2 of content marketing.
Level 2 consistency. Okay. Help me understand the difference between level 1 and level 2 consistency here. Because lots of people say they're consistent with content.
Right, but level 1 consistency is often just sporadic. Posting when inspiration hits, maybe, or when you finally find some time after dealing with all the other fires you have to put out as a founder.
Yeah, fits and starts.
Exactly. Level 2 consistency is different. It means you are disciplined. You block out time every single week and you commit to a regular schedule. Like, we release a new YouTube video every Tuesday no matter what, or we publish a detailed thought leadership thread on X every Thursday morning. It's scheduled, it's reliable.
And for a startup, that kind of consistency.
That consistency is what generates organic discovery over time. It builds an audience. And because you're starting lean and maybe focusing that consistent effort on just one channel to begin with, you can actually master that level 2 consistency much faster than some big legacy brand trying to be everywhere at once.
Okay, so that consistent level 2 content brings in new potential members through organic discovery.
And then that fuels the internal virality loop we talked about. You're already motivated, high-value community members see the quality, they share it, they refer new people who fit the niche, and the whole thing becomes a self-sustaining marketing engine.
An engine, not just a tap you keep pouring money into.
Exactly. It's an asset that generates returns, not just an expense line.
This whole strategy, then owning your audience, really drilling down into high-value niches, generating growth through these internal community loops, it feels like it pushes us directly into this bigger conversation about digital independence, doesn't it? The future of the internet.
It absolutely does. This is the practical application of the shift towards Web 4.0.
Web 4.0. Yeah, it gets defined kind of abstractly sometimes.
It does. People talk about, the blending of physical and digital worlds, integrating users, objects, virtual environments.
Right. Metaverse stuff.
Yeah, kinda. But from the perspective of a brand, or especially a startup trying to be capital efficient, Web 4.0 really represents a deep commitment to digital autonomy, to sovereignty over your own data, your content, your user interactions. It means taking control of the user's identity across all the touch points you manage.
Okay, that sounds great in theory. Digital sovereignty, owning your space.
Yeah.
But I have to push back a bit here. Isn't this just swapping one really high cost, like paying Meta huge sums for customer acquisition, for another potentially massive cost, like building and maintaining your own sophisticated self-hosted tech stack? Doesn't that require an expensive engineering team?
That is the absolutely crucial, honest question every founder has to ask, and the answer is really twofold. First, you have to look back at those ROI metrics we just discussed. That 40% retention boost, that 2.8x revenue increase.
Right, the payoff.
The payoff. Those numbers strongly suggest that the investment in building an owned asset pays for itself much, much faster than endlessly renting space on someone else's platform. The lifetime value equation just flips.
Okay, so the ROI justifies it. What's the second part?
The second part is that the technology itself has evolved significantly. It's actually made building that foundational layer surprisingly accessible now. It removes a lot of that traditional high engineering cost hurdle that might have existed 5 or 10 years ago.
Before we get to the how, let's talk strategy again.
Yeah.
If you own the land now, you also have to write the laws.
Right.
You take on the responsibility of governance and compliance.
Governance becomes absolutely critical, yes, especially as we move into the sort of uncharted Web 4.0 territory. If you're building a sovereign community, you must define your principles upfront. How will interoperability work? How will you manage identity? What are your rules around privacy, security, liabilities? This isn't optional anymore.
And on the privacy and security front, the big one looming over everyone, especially if you have international users, is the GDPR.
Yes. The General Data Protection Regulation out of the EU. It's arguably the toughest privacy and security law on the planet. And crucially, it applies globally if you process the personal data of anyone in the EU, even if your company is based elsewhere.
And it's strict.
Incredibly strict. It imposes serious obligations. Things like mandating data protection by design and by default, ensuring security, integrity, confidentiality, often requiring specific measures like encryption, and strict rules about how long you can even store data.
So if a startup is just relying on, say, a Facebook group,
they're leasing that land, and they're essentially hoping their landlord, Facebook, is handling all that complex GDPR compliance correctly on their behalf.
But if the landlord messes up, the startup, as the data controller, is still on the hook, right?
Absolutely, you're still liable. By owning their own platform, however, a startup gains direct granular control over many of these strict GDPR requirements. You decide precisely where user data is stored. You control how long it's stored. You implement the security protocols like encryption directly.
So owning your platform is also about future-proofing against regulatory risk.
It's a massive, often hidden benefit. You're de-risking your business from potentially huge fines and reputational damage down the line. That's another hidden cost of staying on leased land.
Okay, this brings us back to the practical how.
Yeah.
How can a startup, which we know is usually tight on budget, tight on engineering resources, actually achieve this self-hosted independence? How do they build their own digital home without hiring a massive IT department?
This is where we can look at a project like Linkspreed's Web4 at Home as a really useful model solution. It demonstrates the sheer feasibility of achieving self-sovereignty today.
Web4 at Home. What's the core concept?
The core idea is pretty elegant, actually. It's about transforming something as humble and as affordable as a Raspberry Pi.
Like the little single-board computer.
Exactly, turning that into a fully functional, capable web server. This setup gives the user, or in our case, the startup, total control over their online identity and, critically, provides the self-hosted foundation upon which they can build their own social network or community platform.
So we're shifting from thinking about complex, proprietary, maybe cloud-based systems that cost a fortune to a simple, deployable hardware foundation you control.
That's the potential, yes.
Okay, give us the 30-second interpretation of this technical guide. Forget the code for a moment. What does this mean strategically for a founder who's short on time and maybe not super technical?
Strategically, the interpretation is simple. The decision to pursue digital autonomy, to own your space, can be made and acted upon much more quickly and affordably than most people think. The core foundational resources, the tools, the documentation, they're readily available now. This Linkspreed model proves you don't necessarily need millions in seed funding just to start owning your digital future.
The barrier to entry is lower than perceived.
much lower. And the setup process itself, outlined in their guide, shows the feasibility by using accessible, often open source components.
Okay, walk us through the high-level steps in the source material. What are the key pieces, and what common hurdle does each step overcome for a startup?
Sure. The first steps are pretty standard for anyone setting up a server. You install a lightweight, dedicated operating system like Raspberry Pi OS Lite. Then you install the core software needed, the Apache 2 web server, which is industry standard and open source, and PHP for handling dynamic content. Basic building blocks.
Right, standard stuff. But the tricky part is usually taking that server sitting in your office, or maybe even at home, and securely connecting it to the wider internet, right? That traditionally needed expensive things like static IP addresses, complex network configurations.
Exactly. That's historically been a major hurdle, especially for non-technical folks or small teams. And that's the key problem solved by modern tools mentioned in the guide. The crucial next step involves setting up a secure tunnel using something called Cloudflare Tunnel.
Cloudflare tunnel, how does that help?
This component is a real game changer. It securely exposes your home or office server to the internet without needing a dedicated static public IP address from your internet provider. For a non-technical founder, this is huge. It means you can likely use your standard, cheap business or even home internet connection and still have a secure, publicly accessible server. It effectively bypasses a significant IT cost and complexity barrier.
That solves the accessibility and cost problem. Then you follow that up by configuring Cloudflare for HTTPS and SSL.
Right, which encrypts all the communication between your users and your server, essential for security and trust, and also for things like GDPR compliance.
So that whole process, using these modern tools, lets you create a secure, self-hosted foundation for your community platform, your digital home base, relatively quickly and affordably.
Exactly. What Linkspreed's model demonstrates is that this isn't just some theoretical exercise for giant corporations with huge budgets anymore. It's becoming an attainable goal for pretty much any startup or brand that genuinely prioritizes privacy, control, and owning their community relationship, even on a lean budget.
Okay, so the technical foundation is more accessible. But what about scaling the governance? Running a community, enforcing rules, making decisions that often becomes completely untenable for admins as the community grows. How do you implement rules fairly without needing a huge team of moderators working around the clock?
That's another critical piece of the puzzle for long-term sustainability. And this is where powerful software infrastructure like PolicyKit comes into the picture. It's often used in decentralized communities, but the principles are just as powerful for a self-sovereign brand building its own platform.
PolicyKit, what does it do?
Think of it as infrastructure that lets the community itself or the startup guiding it author a wide range of governance procedures and then have those procedures automatically carried out by code.
So it's not just writing down a list of rules in a document. It's more like coding the actual process for how decisions get made, like coding parliamentary procedure.
That's a fantastic analogy, yes.
Wow.
PolicyKit fundamentally shifts governance. It moves away from just articulating static permissions like only admins can delete posts towards articulating dynamic procedures or processes. The founder, or maybe later the community leaders, can actually code the process of decision-making itself, not just the final permission state.
Can you give a concrete example? What would a procedural policy look like in PolicyKit?
A classic example might be implementing a policy that says something like, for any action flagged as potentially problematic, PolicyKit must select 3 random active community members. Those 3 members then review the action, and a majority vote, 2 out of 3, is required to approve or reject it.
Ah, I see. And because it's written in code.
PolicyKit can execute that entire process automatically. It finds the random members, presents them with the issue, collects their votes, tallies the result, and enforces the outcome. All transparently and without needing constant manual intervention from the startup's core team for every little thing.
That capability seems absolutely crucial if you want to scale a fair and engaging self-sovereign community. Members need to feel they have a voice, that the rules are applied consistently and transparently.
It is arguably the defining difference between a traditional top-down technocratic community run entirely by a small admin team and a more mature, potentially more democratic community built on principles of self-determination and procedural fairness. And for the startup, this automation means you can scale trust and fairness, which directly feed into those high retention metrics without having to scale your manual moderation labor costs linearly. #tag outro.
Okay, wow. Let's try and unpack all of that and bring it together for the listener. It feels like there's this clear convergence happening, right? A convergence of a necessity, the old marketing models are breaking, and new technological possibility.
It really is undeniable. And what it points to is that perfect marketing for a startup, especially early on, probably isn't about running ever more complex ad campaigns on someone else's platform. It's about being ruthlessly capital efficient. It's about being hyper-targeted.
Hyper-targeting that specific person who is going through a specific transition.
Exactly. Like those entrepreneurs hitting a certain revenue milestone, or the new parents focused on regaining core strength, identifying that highly motivated niche.
And then immediately placing them not just into a sales funnel, but into a secure, high-value owned community.
Yes. Because that strategy, as the metrics show, is what immediately starts driving those massive gains in revenue, engagement, retention, while simultaneously eliminating that huge, often devastating financial risk of building your business on borrowed property.
And startups, as we established right at the beginning, they feel uniquely positioned to actually execute this. They need to be capital efficient. They often must focus on high-value niches right away just to survive. They don't have the baggage, the corporate inertia of some huge legacy brand still trying to chase the entire mass market.
They have the agility. And by embracing this ethos of digital sovereignty, by leveraging models like Web4 at home to actually build their own digital home base, they effectively stop paying rent. They start investing in a tangible long-term asset that they fully control.
An asset that transforms their earliest, most loyal customers into their most powerful, self-sustaining growth engine.
And does it all while helping them get ahead of complex regulatory demands like GDPR, instead of just hoping someone else handles it.
So it feels like the real challenge then for the next wave of truly successful brands.
Yeah.
It's not actually the technical skill. As we've seen, the tech is becoming more available, more accessible.
The real challenge is more about institutional bravery, isn't it? It's about having the courage to consciously abandon the siren song, the allure of those massive public platforms, even though they seem easy.
And instead, embrace digital sovereignty. Embrace owning your own space, even though it means accepting the responsibilities that come with it. The governance, the security, the compliance.
That's the crux of it. Do you have the courage, the foresight to take on the responsibility of ownership? Or are you content to keep paying rent and risk becoming the next cautionary tale, the next company that fails, despite having a great idea, because you refuse to stop leasing your audience from someone else?
A provocative final thought indeed. So the question for you, the listener, is, what action, even a small one, will you take today to start securing your own digital future, to start building an asset instead of just paying for a liability?